well. So what are the labs? What are the tests that people should pay attention to when they go to their practitioner, wherever they live in the world, and demand and say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z?
The question you're asking is, how do you know what your metabolic status is? That's what you're asking. And that's a very, very good question. There are a couple of things that you can know just from looking. So vital signs are valuable. Okay, blood pressure is valuable. Your waist circumference is the most valuable. Your belt size. If you're a male and you have a belt size of 40 or greater, chances are you've got visceral and probably liver fat, and you've got a problem. For females, it's 35 inches. So that's something that costs nothing, and you can find that out very easily. This has nothing to do with standing on the scale. This has to do with your belt size. Now, in terms of lab tests, there are a lot of different lab tests out there, and the question is, which ones do you want to know? The very first thing you have to know is, do not take the word normal for an answer. Your doctor will look at the lab slip, at your chem panel, and say, oh, all your labs are normal. Screw that. Okay. Get the friggin' numbers. Write them down. Okay. Just because they say normal, that just means that the number is within the reference range. Well, that reference range is garbage. It's useless. It is BS. Okay. And I've got worse words to say about it. All right. Do you know why that H and the L, the high and the low, are there in the third column on the thing? Because that's $10. All right. They get to charge for that. That's an interpretation. Right. It's junk. Okay. They have to have a reference range in order to be able to put the H or the L. That's not what you want to know. Let me give you an example of a test that is very useful, very valuable. And if your doctor doesn't understand what he or she is looking at, you're going to waste it. It's called an ALT, alanine aminotransferase. This is a test of liver fat. Now, it is sensitive, but not specific. So when it's high, it means something. When it's low, it doesn't. All right. But it is a very valuable test, and it's easy to get, and it comes on a standard chem panel. Now, if you look at an ALT, if you look at the normal range, the reference range, it will tell you that a normal ALT is up to 40 units per liter. This is garbage. Total, complete trash. When I entered medical school in 1976, the upper limit on ALT was 25. Today, it's 40, same test. How come it was 25 then and it's 40 now? The answer, the entire curve has shifted to the right, because now 45% of the population has fatty liver disease, and they don't know it. So they're, quote, healthy, unquote, because they don't know that they've got fatty liver. So they go in, they get their blood drawn. Doctor says, how are you? I'm normal. And then they do the Gaussian distribution on that. And sure enough, 2 standard deviations above the mean, which is where you draw the line, that's at 40. Yeah, now it is. But it used to be at 25. And the reason is because now everyone's got fatty liver disease. So really, 25 is the upper limit of normal. And if your doctor doesn't know that, then you're going to miss it. You're not going to know that you've got a problem. That's one example. Second example, fasting insulin. I think fasting insulin is the single best test of your metabolic status. And your doctor has to order it. It's not part of a standard chem panel. Now, the problem is the American Diabetes Association says, do not draw fasting insulins. Do not. It says right on their website, fasting insulin is useless. Garbage. Total, complete trash also. Now, why do they say that? They say it for 2 reasons, both of which are wrong. The first reason they say it is because fasting insulin, the assay, is not standardized across laboratories. That is true. That is true. So what? Here's the problem. There is a prohormone, of insulin called proinsulin. It is a bigger molecule. The C-peptide is a fragment that has to be cleaved out of that proinsulin molecule to actually make insulin. When your pancreas is working super hard and is ultra stressed, as it is when you're metabolically ill, your pancreas wants to put out whatever it can as fast as it can to try to deal with the high blood glucose. And so it will release proinsulin instead of cleaving out the C-peptide and releasing insulin. And some of the antibodies in some of the assays, especially the cheap assays around the country, will measure proinsulin as insulin. We won't distinguish between the two. So that is true. And that's why the American Diabetes Association says don't draw it. If it's high, that's a warning sign that there's a problem, whether you're measuring insulin or proinsulin. So that really doesn't fly. That their concern. The second reason they say don't draw it is fasting insulin levels do not correlate with obesity. That is also true. So what? Because it's not about obesity. As I've already told you, obesity is a red herring. It's about metabolic health. It's about the fat you can't see. And fasting insulin correlates with that ectopic fat, the fat in the organs, very well. So it's an extremely valuable piece of information. And, you're told not to get it. So that's why I wrote this book, is, to give people the information that their doctors aren't learning.
So where do you want the fasting insulin ideally? What level?
So anything over 15 microunits per mil is going to be an issue. So you really want it to be below 10. I mean, as low as possible. I mean, 2 is really good. I mean, and the lower it is, the longer you're going to live, for sure. But if you're at 15 or greater, you've got an issue.
So ALT, fasting insulin, anything else come to mind?
Sure. Several others. I mean, lipid profile, people know about that, but everyone looks at the lipid profile, and the thing they're really interested in is the LDL. Turns out the LDL is not nearly as important as the serum triglyceride. And serum triglyceride is really telling you what your liver's doing. The LDL is telling you about other parts of your body, but you really want to know what your liver's doing, because triglyceride comes from the liver. And so that's, telling you what your liver is doing with the sugar it's being presented with. And a fourth one that's really important is uric acid. And uric acid is a byproduct of purine metabolism in the liver. It goes up with high protein diets, but it also goes up with high sugar diets. And so we use uric acid as a proxy for sugar consumption. And uric acid is particularly egregious because it interferes with mitochondrial function in the cell. And outside the cell, it interferes with the enzyme in your blood vessels called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or eNOS, which is your endogenous blood pressure lower nitric oxide is. So if you're not making nitric oxide, your blood pressure goes up. So people think salt is the reason for high blood pressure. Wrong. Sugar is, because of this effect. So uric acid is important too.
So just for clarity, for triglycerides and uric acid, what levels do you like to see?
So for triglyceride, under 100 would be good. For uric acid, below 5.5 for an adult, below 5.0 for a kid.
Got it.
Love that, something to look at.